this is the outcome that sticks with you. This is when you look back and remember, is there something more I could have done? Something more I could have said? Could I have said it in a different way? Did I need different or better or more coaching? Because I look back and know that, hey, this is an outcome that I potentially had the power to change.
All right, let's kick off today's show. Today we're talking with negotiation expert Scott Tillema about his 4-part framework for influencing anyone in high-pressure situations. Scott is a retired SWAT hostage negotiator. He received his training by the FBI and Harvard University and has over 20 years in law enforcement expertise. In 2023, Scott dedicated his career to serving others in a new way as a corporate trainer. He's a founding partner of the Negotiation Collective and speaks on how to use the same powerful life-saving negotiation principles and techniques to create business success. Today, we're going to chat about why emotional management trumps logic in any negotiation, see how tactical breathing can help calm you when those stakes are high, and find out why timing your message matters more than the words themselves. Welcome to the show, Scott. Great to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You have a unique background as a SWAT hostage negotiator, and I'd love to start with just learning a little bit about what piqued your interest in high-stakes negotiations.
Yeah, it's an exciting field. So if you are the kind of person who doesn't enjoy a boring job or sitting at a desk or something that's going to be the same all the time, this might be a career consideration. I brought in my background as a major in behavioral science, a master's in psychology, a real interest in the brain, how people think, how people make decisions they make, and brought this to a career in law enforcement and said, how can we put this all together in a way that's going to be interesting and exciting for me and impactful to the people we're serving, and landed on hostage negotiation.
Did you find yourself drawn to high-stakes negotiations before your career, like as a kid or growing up?
I think I was a very boring person, very predictable, very nice, normal, middle-class family growing up, nothing too exciting. So I think the idea of a shot of adrenaline every time you go to work was a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And for many in our audience, they're not in such high-stakes negotiation situations, but I think for a lot of us, we have a misunderstanding around negotiations being a competition, one side winning. And I'd love for you to unpack just your view of what an active negotiation really should be.
Yeah, and I think that's very normal to say, I want to get more, I want to win, I want this outcome. But when it was proposed to me, the idea of the person you are going to be talking with is your negotiation partner, not your opponent, not the other team, not those people over there. This is your partner. It really changed my mindset of how I need to come into these conversations, because truly we need to work together to get to an outcome that we otherwise couldn't get to. So we kind of move away from, hey, I'm trying to win this, but rather, how do we together get to this outcome? And then I studied the work of Dr. George Kohlreiser, who is a psychologist, professor of leadership, and he talks about bonding. Everything he talks about is around bonding and connection. And I really brought this piece in to say, how do I connect? Because if I want influence, influence begins with connection. And if we want connection, connection begins with a dialogue. So I need to be able to sit with someone, have a real conversation, be able to talk, be able to listen, and connect with this individual who may be suffering a significant crisis in their life. And sometimes that's tough to do, but I found out that's the only way, because we're not going to force people. We're not going to push people. People need to be able to make that decision to say, I am going to choose this outcome that we're trying to get.
And for many of us in our life, negotiation is typically with our partners, with our family, friends, coworkers. We think about the high stakes negotiations around buying a house or a car, or maybe negotiating your salary. But for the most part, we're negotiating every day just in our daily lives with people we are connected with. And if we take it as a I win, you lose, or you're my opponent strategy, well, we're going to fray a lot of those important relationships in our life.
For sure. And how many of us oftentimes give the very worst of our communication to the people who matter most in our lives? And it's, not because we're bad people, but we work all day. We've been working all week. So by the time we get home in the evening, by the time we get to the weekend, where we should be performing at our very best in negotiation, in conflict, in communication, they sometimes get our worst.
Well, I think very many people listening probably wouldn't assume that you're trying to connect with someone who takes a hostage. So walk us through, what you would do to prepare for these situations when, obviously we're not trying to connect with criminals.
Yeah. So I don't do the international hostage taking, kidnap, and ransom kind of thing. I think that's more like a business negotiation where someone's taking a hostage because they want something. But in the US, thankfully, hostage taking doesn't happen frequently. And when the SWAT team is called, is usually because we have an individual who's in crisis. Maybe they're armed and barricaded, or sometimes maybe they take a hostage because maybe they're robbing a store and they didn't intend to take hostages, but the police drove by and I don't know what to do. Or it's a domestic type situation within the family where it's an emotion driven event. And in these cases, it may not even be clear to the person who is in crisis what it is they want here. And when they're in such a heightened state, that becomes a little bit unpredictable and a little bit dangerous. So the first thing I want to do is try and lower that tension. And I think there is an expectation that when the police show up and you're on the phone with somebody, that is going to be like it is maybe in some of the movies where you're going to do this, I'm going to tell you what to do, and we're going to have that confrontation. And how disarming can it be when I show up and say, hi, my name is Scott. I'm with the police department. I'd like to help. Is everybody okay in there? And I come in with a collaborative tone. In addition to the actual words that I'm saying, it can really change that mindset because they're expecting a certain thing. And maybe sometimes they just need that time to come down a little bit. I'm not going to come in and start telling them what to do or demanding anything from them or even asking them, hey, what are your demands? I mean, rarely do we ever have somebody who wants some demands. People don't even know what they want because they're so overrun with emotion. So if you want to be good at this, we have to understand how we handle emotion, both our own emotion and our own excitement, as well as the person that we're going to be sitting down and having a conversation with, because these are all emotionally driven incidents.
And in order to bridge this gap, to get an understanding of who you're talking with, what is it that they need, what are they communicating, what's not being said, all of those things, is tactical empathy. And it's funny because I do a lot of content creation for the company, and when I'm posting videos about creating empathy, when people see that there's an actual science behind it, they start freaking out, right? I had recently gotten called somebody who teaches dark empathy. So when I saw your term of tactical empathy, I was like, well, that's much more appropriate, because all this is having an education on how these things work and then using them to our advantage. That's afforded to everybody who's willing to look into these skills, and and as AJ and I have been telling people and teaching people for the last 18 years, they're easily learnable. So if you're not willing to grab an understanding of interpersonal communication, how people relate and just wish magic that it happens, that's on you. Why do I have to be the bad guy? Why do I have to get painted as the nefarious dark psychology expert? I have a mission too, just as you do. And as long as I'm not using it for nefarious purposes or trying to hurt others, I have a life, a job, and a family that I want to be working for, and I have to create for them. So I'm going to use everything in my power to make those things happen. Tactical empathy is about having an understanding of what needs to be done and using science and human connection as a means to get it.
Right. Because very practically, you can't solve a problem if you don't know what it is. And so often we come in and I project how I feel and what I think to you in your situation. And we wonder, well, why didn't that work? Because, well, I don't know you. I don't know your situation. I don't know what struggle you're going through right now. So I will argue to people, the enemy of empathy is problem solving. We jump right in and we start solving problems. Why are we solving problems? We shouldn't be solving problems right now. We should be listening and working to understand. And if nothing else, it's just self-serving, because if I want to get through this, if I want to get a good outcome, if I want to get to where we want to go, I need to understand the situation. And it's so powerful when we're truly empathetic, when we want to hear, when we want to sit with somebody. We're not solving their problem. We're listening to them, and they feel, hey, this is the first time that somebody cares. Somebody actually gets it. Somebody is interested in hearing my perspective. That goes a long way in reducing some of that tension. And I think that this is the key skill for anybody in leadership. This is why you should study hostage and crisis negotiation, because you want influence over people externally, future clients, marketing, sales. You want influence internally over your teams. How do we get the best out of people? They want to show up for work. This is a place they want to be and give their very best. We want influence. How do we do that? It's through connection.
And with that, gathering information. So I think so many of us default to trying to learn tactics and strategies to one up or get the other side to, change their mind. But in reality, the person with the most information typically is the one who has the source of power in that negotiation and can guide it towards a win-win scenario for everyone.
100%. Your power in negotiation is information and options. So many people think it's tactics at the table. The best negotiators are smooth talkers. And yes, there's an element of that. We can discuss that a little bit. But your real power is information and options. What does this person want? What can we offer them? What are their interests? I know what your position is. Your position is no, or you want this. But what do you really want here? What is the interest behind it? Now we're starting to open doors.
Yeah, and I think so many of us look at negotiations in those key moments, and we're then putting a lot of pressure on ourselves by not practicing these skills outside of those difficult conversations and outside of those moments where the stakes are really high. So what's your approach to really building these muscles of empathy and active listening to be able to garner the information you need in those key moments?
For sure. And there's 8 skills of active listening. This is what the FBI teaches their negotiators, or any negotiation class teaches their negotiators. And it stuns me that we have people who are titled as negotiators who don't know these skills of active listening. And I'm not yet convinced that the 8 skills of active listening are really going to make you that much better of a listener. But it really demonstrates to the other person that you're listening. And that's the value, that now you feel that I'm listening. And yes, along the way, I'm gathering information and options. And people ask me, well, how do I practice this? I will tell you later today, you are going to get a spam phone call from somebody. They're trying to steal your credit card number. Maybe your granddaughter is in jail in Mexico, whatever their scam of the day is. I want you to take that call and have a conversation. And you're not allowed to hang up until you've gotten through the 8 skills of active listening. You should have enough time to Google it and figure out what they are, jot them all down. And as you go through this conversation with this scammer, I want you to check that off. Oh, you sound frustrated. There's a nice emotion label. Check. And we're going right through the list, and you're going to practice. And in 5 minutes, you're going to be so impressed that you just got another chance to practice your 8 skills of active listening with somebody who's trying to scam you. And then when you get done, you say thank you and hang up and wait for the next one.
Yeah, unfortunately, that next call is coming as well.
It's coming.
You answered the first
one. Yeah, I know in those moments where adrenaline has now been injected, right? It's hard to garner these skills, but there are other moments outside of even the scam calls where we can really work on active listening. And that active listening starts to elicit the information that creates the options for us in a negotiation and an opportunity for us to find that win-win in any situation. So when you're getting ready for one of these high-stakes conversations where emotion's going to be running, what is your personal checklist to help you prepare?
Yeah, and this is around the concept of managing yourself first. And I push this to every leader, every conflict resolution, every negotiation class that we teach. A huge principle is this: manage yourself first, because there's nobody out there that needs a class in conflict resolution. When somebody's yelling at you, should you start yelling at them or should you take time to listen? We all know, or we should know, the basics of conflict resolution. So this is really an exercise in self-management. So can I manage myself? And part of this is having that stress inoculation of having practiced and done it before. If this is your first important conversation where there's going to be consequence based on what's just going to be discussed, this is probably not ideal for you. But are you willing to sit down and practice not only going through your talking points, but have you practiced and prepared your delivery of how you are going to say it? Because it's easy when we're on the couch thinking about what we're going to say, or in the shower if we're talking out loud, or wherever you might do your practice. But when it's game time and you have somebody sitting across from you and the pressure's on and they might be crying, they might be yelling, they might be standing up and moving around, how are you going to respond? Do you have that awareness of how you function under stress? So number one, take some time and practice. Like if this is a serious business for you where you stand to gain or lose millions, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, this practice has to be part of your routine. But when we get into it, for me, tactical breathing or box breathing is a big thing, where we breathe in for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 4, breathe out for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 4. And this just instinctively kicks in. I remember I was responding to a call of an active shooter at a shopping mall once, and I was a rank of lieutenant, meaning that I was going to be somebody in charge once I got there. And instinctively, as I was racing to the mall with 3 tactical officers in the car, I remember kicking right into this tactical breathing or this box breathing to make sure that I can think and process this information rather than move to this instinctive fight or flight space. In a negotiation, we have to be able to listen. We have to be creative. We have to be able to have room for empathy and connection. And we can't do that if we're overwhelmed.
Even with our clients in our X Factor Accelerator, all of the macro points, there's 6 macro points to our conflict resolution. And by the time we get to the conflict resolution section, we have already practiced each one of those macro points in its own separate thing together. So now that when we're now doing conflict resolution, they've had practice with each of those steps, and now they're seeing how they all stacked together work through a resolution. And we all know that certainly everybody in this conversation knows what happens if I know that I have a negotiation tomorrow, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to listen to an Art of Charm podcast on negotiation tonight before I go to bed, and I'll be good to go tomorrow. That's not how this works, because as you mentioned, there is a lot of tension and pressure in the unknown. And until we are comfortable with that tension and pressure in the unknown, we're not going to remember those 6 magic steps to Art of Charm's conflict negotiation. You're not going to be able to walk through each one and be able to focus on the micro points of what you're looking for and listening for within each step. All of that comes in our implementation sessions, which is why you want to pick up that phone and see what the scam is of the day.
To practice.
Yeah. And what you say is so true. I remember my first negotiation. Now, I was trained by the FBI. We went through the class. You did the role plays. You did the skill building. But I remember that first negotiation, I was overwhelmed with stress. Like it was a guy who was reportedly holding a woman hostage. Police thought they heard duct tape and a bullet being racked into a gun. And all of a sudden they're like, here you go, kid. You're our lead negotiator. Like I just had that moment of, I can't believe this. And it was overwhelming that there's a lot of stress and pressure here. And, it takes some time to get into that flow. It takes some time to be on the phone a few times before you kind of settle in and say, hey, I've got this. So it's not only building the confidence, but knowing the skill and being comfortable with that ambiguity and that unpredictable whatever is going to happen next to know, all right, I can get through this.
Well, there's also a power that's unleashed there as well. So if you understand all those steps and then all of a sudden you see how stacking together makes it powerful to walk through a resolution. For our folks, after we go through that session, it's now look in your life for any sort of contention or disagreement or anything that you would like to see fixed that needs to be tweaked, and go use these steps. And it's quite funny because everyone starts making their life instantly better, because all of a sudden, when they take that class, they realize they had already learned all the steps. Now they're seeing how the pieces all fit together towards a resolution. And now they're eager to use it. And all of a sudden, everything in their life starts to get better. And it's a lot of fun. I certainly know, as I was learning conflict resolution, I at the time that I was learning it, I was still managing a bar and a rock and roll club. So there was plenty of conflict for me to get into every night to walk through these. But after the second or third time through and realizing the power that I had just unleashed, I was looking for conflict to find resolution, because I just wanted to continue sharpening these skills because I felt so powerful using them. And it's like, for a lot of people, if you're not implementing these things that you're learning on all of these podcasts and all of these books, you're missing out on actualizing your true potential.
And I love what you said here. It makes your life better.
Yeah.
Because these professional development classes that people go to, these skills don't end at 5 o'clock. They don't just turn off, because this is a process. If at first people give up on this because it's awkward, it's clunky, it doesn't work well the first time, the process, we're moving from something you don't know to something you do know. And once you know it, we're moving from something you know to a skill that you have, which is a really good step. But now over the next months and years, we take that last step and it becomes who you are. And once it becomes who you are, then we can drill down. And now I'm going to study the nonverbals. Now I'm going to work on my own posture, facial expressions. We're really starting to put the cherry on top, because I've managed myself. I built this skill. It's who I am. And now I can be really present with somebody. And these are the people who can just, they get you to say yes, because they're that good.
And it's not only the transformation within yourself when you implement all these skills, it's the transformation of your reality around you when you put them in the place to change it.
I think a lot of people have a blind spot around how much their emotions rule the day in these situations. They think that decisions are made logically, their own decisions they logic, and then other people are acting logically in the decisions that they make. But what we're talking about here is getting comfortable managing your own emotions so that you can have the influence to manage other people's emotions. And I think that's a real blind spot for a lot of us, because we like to think we're just logical, and everything after we make that decision, we can logically say made sense. When in actuality, a lot of what's going on with this release of adrenaline and the emotions you're carrying into these difficult conversations, maybe getting cut off on your way to work or having a disagreement with your partner, and then you have to show up and manage a conflict between coworkers, those emotions rule the day.
100%. In our training classes, we'll do a poll, are you more emotional? Are you more logic and reason? And then we segue into an exercise where people are stunned at their own outcomes, where it's clearly an emotional decision. This is an outcome. And I say, all right, now let's go back and add some time and add some thought to this. And their heads are exploding, going, I can't believe this is the outcome that I chose. And they realize it's all emotion based. And what we talk about is the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and that very famous passage in there where he talks about between stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space is your freedom to choose your response. And that's your growth. That's your power. And how can we add more time between stimulus and response so we can bring back some of that logic and reason which we need? And some of the studies that show that we're all emotional, they say that we then go back and justify our emotional response using logic and reason to make ourselves feel better and look smarter about the emotional decision that we just made.
Yeah, and I think we try to suppress or ignore those emotions instead of actually doing the more important thing, which is labeling, getting comfortable with understanding them. And then that allows you to be more comfortable with picking up on those emotions in others. Because a lot of what we're talking about here is not just managing our own emotions, but you got to manage the other person at the other side of the table's emotions, whether it's the conflict that they're heading off or whether it's the fierce negotiation they're in with you. Their emotions really matter in the outcome.
For sure. And when you get to that point where you can manage yourself and then manage that other person, now you're leading. Now you are leading the negotiation. You are going to get to better outcomes nearly 100% of the time when you are in the driver's seat. And there's negotiation trainers out there that talk about, let's separate the person from the problem. And I'm convinced that they've never actually done a negotiation, because how many of us are so invested in everything we do, whether it be our work, our personal life, our relationships, that when something goes bad, we simply don't care. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, you feel that when there's a failure, you feel it when there's a bad outcome, and we don't like that. One of the best books out there, I really enjoy this book, is called Beyond Reason, Using Emotions When You Negotiate. Dan Shapiro from the Harvard program on negotiation. Love this one, talks about 5 core concerns. And it really validates the idea that we are emotional people and we should use this to our advantage.
So that's a big first step, is understanding and getting comfortable with your own, and then moving into understanding the other side. And then in your 4 principles framework, you have 3 other principles that I'd love to cover, the next being timing. So what is timing? And let's unpack that for the audience. How can we use that to our advantage?
Yeah, timing is your strategy piece, knowing when to deliver the message. So, for example, I'm negotiating with a guy. I'm the lead negotiator with a man who's armed and barricaded. He says, I'm going to kill you. And then he starts shooting. So we got shots being fired out of this house where he's armed and barricaded. My goal here is to get this guy out peacefully, without violence. So as he's shooting at me, is this the time to say to him, pardon me, sir, I think you should put the gun down and surrender? That it's comical, because you know it's going to be an absolute flop failure, because there's no way that this is going to be effective. But why? Maybe I got to say it in the right tone, but more importantly, I have to say it at the right time. So the timing thought is, am I in the best place to deliver this message? Am I centered? Am I where I need to be? And is the person that I'm talking with, are they in a position where they can even receive this message? Can they even process that? We were negotiating with a man. He was holding a woman hostage, and you can hear in the background, he's vomiting as he's negotiating with the police negotiator. And this is the moment where we look around and be like, is anybody concerned that maybe he's got a stomach bug or early strain of COVID? Clearly, that's not the case. He's so psychologically overwhelmed, he can't even control his own body right now. So let's be mindful and thoughtful about when we deliver the message. But so often people they can't wait to talk. They're just waiting and waiting. And they just want to say whatever they need to say rather than being thoughtful. And we couple this with understanding as the first principle to say, timing, have I done what I was supposed to do first? Understand the situation, understand the person. This is your power. And now am I going to be thoughtful in when I deliver the message?
Now, you talked about this a little bit earlier. I'd love to talk about delivery, because often it's more important how we say it than what we're actually saying in these moments, with all of the emotion that's running through the difficult conversation.
100%. Gary Nesner, one of the first or the first chief negotiator of the FBI, always talks about in his debriefings with people that he's had negotiations with, he'll always say this line. People will tell him, I really don't remember what you said, but I really like how you said it. And that's what people remember. We create feeling in others with our delivery. And in a real setup with a SWAT negotiation, it's not like you see on TV. On TV, you got Denzel Washington. He's looking good. He's on the cell phone strutting up and down Fifth Avenue like he's looking good. But in the real world, it doesn't work like that. I am sitting right across from a coach or a secondary negotiator who is doing nothing but managing my delivery. And with that, we're looking at the rate, the rhythm, the pressure, the volume, the tone of what's being said. And in real time, I got somebody who's making adjustments to my delivery as we're having these negotiations. And it's powerful because you get excited. So we're starting to pick up the speed and the momentum. And sometimes you just need someone to give you that cue. Hey, let's slow it down here a little bit. Or let's turn down the volume here. Let's take the pressure off the words. And now we're giving an entirely different feeling to somebody else just based on the delivery. My content really isn't changing at all, but the delivery changes, and it's an entirely different feeling from someone sitting across the table from you.
And that cadence is so powerful. You can use that to your advantage. We often don't realize internally that our cadence is picking up, and having that outside perspective of saying, hey, slow down, is so impactful in these moments Do you have any checks for yourself internally in these moments to help guide you if you don't have that coach in the room with you?
Yeah, well, two things. First of all, practice and have this opportunity, work with somebody who can say, here's where you get going. As soon as you get interrupted, you get a little louder, you get a little faster. As soon as you get frustrated, here's what happens. So understanding yourself and getting that feedback, but ask somebody. Ask someone you know and trust. This is going to be a great moment where you can sit down and ask someone, hey, under stress, under pressure, how is my delivery in conflict communication? And there's a person out there who's been waiting a very, very long time to give you this feedback of how you engage with them when the pressure's on. So get that feedback, get that practice, and it's going to change. It's going to change your person effect, how people experience you just based on little adjustments of your delivery. And people are going to love it. If we're coupling it with the first principle of understanding, being a better listener, being thoughtful of when we deliver the message, and now we're starting to put these pieces together with being thoughtful of our delivery elements, people are going to experience you in a whole different way, and they are going to love it.
I'm sure my wife is itching to have that conversation for feedback with me.
There's something she wants to tell you.
Absolutely. Now, the last piece of the framework is respect. And I think oftentimes we are looking for the resolution and we're not thinking about the respect. But in these difficult conversations, most likely we're going to have to do business with this person again. We're going to have to work with this person. We're going to live with our spouse. So respect is a big part of the difficult conversation, but it's often overlooked because we're seeking resolution.
I think it almost begins with the mindset of respect. And it's more than just being respectful. Because when I ask somebody, I said, how do you demonstrate respect to someone? I'll get the yes, please, no, thank you, yes, sir, no, ma'am, the politeness. But respect for me is going deeper to understand what's driving human behavior. And when I drill down on respect, there's really kind of four elements that I look at. It's fairness. Do people feel that they're being treated fairly? Empathy, which we kind of led off that conversation with. Does someone feel like someone cares about them? Autonomy is the freedom to make my own decisions. And are we giving them some element of autonomy? And then recognition, which is a huge driver of human behavior, a huge driver of engagement. Are people being recognized in the way that they want to receive it? And sometimes I'll get challenged on this one. Okay, I'm negotiating with a guy who's holding a knife to his throat. And he's been sitting there for 30 minutes. I've been telling him, drop the knife, put the knife down. And he's just simply not doing it. What is there to recognize? And I said, let's brainstorm it then. Let's do that scenario and come up with 10 statements of positive recognition. And we can do it. How about, thank you for not hurting yourself. I appreciate that you've taken time to share your situation. Thanks for not insulting my mother. We can come up with a whole bunch of different pieces of positive recognition, even when seemingly somebody isn't doing a whole lot. Let's look for what we want to have happen in the future and give a little bit of that positive feedback and see if we can connect these pieces, these elements of fairness, empathy, autonomy, recognition with that respect trigger inside of them and have them feel like they are a partner in the outcome of what's about to happen.
Can you unpack the autonomy piece of that a little bit more for us?
So this is the freedom to make our decisions. So I tell people, hey, do you want to, in like a business negotiate, here's our offer. And the answer is either going to be yes or no. But what if we give 3 different packages and 3 different options for them to consider here? So now I really like this. I really like this. I really like that. You have some freedom. In my world, I've arrested hundreds, if not thousands of people. They're handcuffed behind their back. We get them back into the lockup facility. I'll ask them, hey, I'm going to take these handcuffs off and get you a little bit more comfortable, but I still need to handcuff you to this bench. Would it be more comfortable for you if it's your right hand or your left hand? Seemingly, it's a small piece, but instead of me telling them what to do and having full control over them, hey, maybe my right hand or maybe my left hand. In either case, I don't care. They're not going anywhere. They're still going to be locked down. But these little moments where we can offer them the freedom to make a decision is really, really powerful. And to maybe go further, there's a whole list of like unwritten rules in each of our workplaces, each of our fields. And imagine this, you're on an airplane and you got the window seat. You know your airplane ticket says you have the window seat, but it doesn't say you are in exclusive control of the 4-cent window shade. But you know that you are. Everybody knows that. If I'm in the window seat, I control the window shade. Because what happens when the person over on the aisle reaches across? I'm looking out the window. I'm flying wherever I'm flying, looking at this beautiful sunset. And this person reaches across and closes my window shade. I'm going to lose my mind, right? It's like, what are you doing? Like, this is mine. You are in my space. So sometimes a power imbalance can be an autonomy trigger. When you are the boss, you are HR, and maybe you're coming in and working with somebody, and there's the power isn't quite even. The person can feel triggered just because I want the freedom to make my own decisions, or micromanaging. I'm coming in and I'm telling you what to do. That's an autonomy trigger. Get out of my space. Let me do my work.
And it's powerful even for parents to be able to guide your children with a range of choices, all of which are acceptable to you, but create them the freedom to make the choice. They're going to follow that direction a lot better than you barking orders at them or only giving them one option of behavior.
We're going to give more if it's our idea.
That puts you in a position where you have to know what the outcomes are that you would like to see and work towards them. Going in without that and then hoping that the other person maybe has that is not going to allow you to feel very confident in that negotiation. It's not going to allow you to drive to a resolution. And it's just two people then staring at each other going, maybe that person will take care of it. Well, maybe this other person will take care of it. But if you have those things aligned up beforehand, you can go in excited. You can go in with a game plan. You can have an understanding and a plan of what goals need to be met in order to reach the ultimate goal and ultimate resolution.
That's it. Brilliant. I know where I am and I know where I want to go. And I think those are really good starting pieces for a negotiation. Now, we might not be able to see the path on how to get there because I don't know you. I'm not sure how this is going to go. The best negotiators believe in what is possible. I know where I am. I know where I want to go. And I've got the skills and tools and structures, techniques to help guide the process through whatever you might throw at me. And I'll remind people that when somebody gets loud or they get disrespectful or they call you names, this might be them out of control, but it might be them very much in control. And this could be a technique designed to mess with you a little bit because I want to find out as soon as I can start having you react to things, now I'm starting to take control of this. So this could be nothing more than a tactic. We have to be that good. Know where you are, know where you want to go, and be willing to go into the unknown with somebody else.
And if you're not dealing with somebody who has the best intentions, regardless of what sort of negotiation it is, once they see that you are being reactive, like a child understanding that now his parents are getting a divorce and he can will them against each other, they will. It's just, that's just how it works.
For sure. People are going to take advantage of you out there. And that's a sad reality. I don't like the naive approach that we're all going to win and we're all going to get something and have a great outcome. People are waiting to take advantage of you. Let's be smarter than that and show up. If nothing else, protect yourself, protect your team. And people have a very accommodating style of negotiation. And I say that's very nice, but let's not employ social norms in a business setting. These are business norms and have the mindset of, I don't negotiate for me, I negotiate for we. And that right there can change your entire mindset to say, as soon as you come up to an agreement, now you have to turn around to your team and explain to them the outcome that we just got. And it changes your mindset to say, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to get more for me and the people I serve and love.
And these skills are common knowledge now, and you can get this training anywhere. And we certainly work with our clients. So not only do they understand the power of these, but they can protect themselves because others will use these tools if they know they can get away with it. And that's why you should not shy away from understanding interpersonal relationships and the mechanisms that drive them.
That's it. Negotiation, conflict resolution, influence. These are huge skills that we need to have.
Yeah.
Because the old concept of knowledge is power is gone. We're all experts. If you got ChatGPT on your phone or your computer, I can give you any paper on any topic in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you don't have the ability to be smart about something, you're failing in your process. But How do we connect with others? How do we get better outcomes? This is still a skill. It's still an art. How can you do this? And the best leader, it's going to be the best leaders and everybody else by a mile. There's going to be such a divide between the people who can connect and get to the outcomes with other people and the people who are just pretenders. That gap is going to continue to widen. And I want to encourage everybody, let's be in the leadership zone.
I think there's a lot to be learned from failure in these situations as well. So we've discussed what to do, how to approach it, and hopefully led our listeners to success. But let's unpack those previous failures. Do any stand out in your mind? And what are the lessons that we can take from failures that we've had in conflict resolution, negotiation in the past to become better for the future?
For sure. And anybody who is in the negotiation space who says, well, I haven't had a bad outcome or I've never failed, either number one, they haven't done it, or number two, they're not trying hard enough. Because in business negotiation, you should be hearing no. I want people to be telling you no, because then you're asking for a big enough thing here. But to answer your question very specifically, yes, we've had bad outcomes. One of them that comes to mind is I was negotiating with a man who had a gun to his head, and I was face to face. And usually we do this by the phone, but because of the circumstances of the situation, I was in his basement. He was sitting in his basement and I was in his basement with him. And there was some distance, and here he is holding a gun to his head. And as the negotiator, my job is to get him to put that gun down. And I had some different strategies that I was using. And it turned out that this was not a successful negotiation. Without getting into all the details, he did not put the gun down, and we did not get a peaceful resolution here. And this is the outcome that sticks with you. This is when you look back and remember, is there something more I could have done? Something more I could have said? Could I have said it in a different way? Did I need different or better or more coaching? Because I look back and know that, hey, this is an outcome that I potentially had the power to change. And in my world, we know that we can get these bad outcomes where somebody hurts themselves, they hurt others. We know there's bad things that could come. And because of that, we take our preparation very seriously. That we know I'm the only person that I can fully control. I can work to nudge or influence or move others in the direction we want them to go, but I control me. And if there's going to be a bad outcome, it's not because I am uneducated or unprepared or not experienced enough. If we get a bad outcome, it's simply because that's a choice the other person made. And it allows us to move forward from that and not be consumed when we get these tough outcomes to say, I have failed. Did it give us an outcome that we didn't want? Significantly. And that's what motivates us during practice. Every time we sit down and we prepare and learn and educate with a team, it's because we're driven by the fact that we know if we don't get a good outcome, somebody's going to get hurt.
And the frame, what if I'm wrong, I think is such an important perspective to take in these scenarios, not only the life-threatening ones, but in those negotiations that didn't go your way. What were those preconceived notions, suspicions, ideas that you brought to the table that you thought maybe was their problem or maybe was the solution they were looking for? And as you start to unpack, where things went wrong, start to ask yourself, like, was I actually asking the right questions? Was I seeking the right information? Or was I making assumptions that ended up hurting the negotiation?
And the people who make assumptions are probably going to be at a disadvantage. And in this particular case, I knew that he had been released from the hospital maybe 9 days earlier. And I don't know if maybe I didn't know that up front or I learned that later and just kind of glazed over that information. But I remember in this negotiation with him, I was trying to convince him to go to the hospital because I know that everybody expects that we're going to put the handcuffs on and take him to jail and they're going to be sitting at the police station. And that's kind of a lousy place to be. Nobody really wants to be there. But my thought was, if I could get him to agree to go to the hospital to do a wellness check and evaluation, psych evaluation, physical evaluation, this is going to be very preferable to going and sitting in a jail cell somewhere. And at the time, I was very lucky that I had a very healthy life. I had never spent a night in the hospital before. But now I have had the pleasure of spending 21 straight days in the hospital last year. And I realize that's not a place that anybody wants to go. If you've ever been in the hospital, you know I don't want to be there. I would probably prefer to sit by myself in a jail cell than be having somebody coming in and taking my blood and poking me with a needle and waking me up at 3 a.m. So here I am trying to convince him, let's go to the hospital. But what if I'm wrong in that? What if I had a coach that came up to me and said, hey, what if this isn't the right strategy? What if this isn't the right approach? Let's try something different. It's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about me being right. Everything we do is about the outcome we're trying to achieve. And so often people won't ask themselves the question, what if I'm wrong on this? Because we think we might be embarrassed. It's not about you. It's about the outcome. And if we can set ourselves aside for a minute and say, hey, team, come together and give me some thoughts on this, maybe we can get to better outcome.
One of the cherries on top that you stressed earlier was nonverbal communication. And we've seen this in our own clients, that it's a big blind spot. Oftentimes internally, we feel that we're showcasing different nonverbal signals than we actually are under tension and pressure. And we actually film our clients in these high stakes moments to practice for them to see, okay, now I'm trying to flirt, or I'm trying to talk to a stranger, or I'm in a conflict with someone. What are those nonverbals that come up that maybe I didn't realize or were blind spots for me? How do you approach delivery of nonverbals in these situations where those emotions are running high?
This is where things have changed, at least in the police SWAT negotiation world over the last 5 or 10 years, because traditionally everything we did was by phone. Just because it's safe when I can talk to you from 3 blocks away. And if I'm on the phone, then I can have people around me and I can have this coaching and be passing notes back and forth. But the world has changed significantly in the last 10 years. Even 5 years ago, if I were going to be on a Skype with somebody, this must be some stranger in a foreign country or something, because it's not really something that we do. But now, are we spending our whole life on Teams or Zoom or doing video chats with people around the world? All the time. Everybody is in the professional space. So this is a very normal thing. And is this going to change how we communicate? And for sure. And that comes down to even the uniforms that we're wearing. We wore the green, like Army man SWAT uniforms. I was like, I don't know if that's very warm and approachable and friendly. Might I look a little bit more approachable if I were wearing a polo shirt or a t-shirt or something where we can have a bit of a conversation? So what we see is so powerful. And what I love in the nonverbal space, I like studying Joe Navarro. I like this group called the Behavior Panel, 4 guys that came together during COVID, and they got this YouTube channel. Now they're on Dr. Phil, and they talk about, and they go deep. Like, these are the best of the best. They're looking at your pupil dilation. They're studying your blink rate. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good. Because I was a detective for 5.5 years, and all we do is interview interrogation. I was like, these guys are top notch. But for the rest of us, I really suggest 2 things. Are we looking for clusters of behavior? You know, I'm talking to you and I'm leaned back, my palms are open, and I'm maybe exposing my neck, signs that this person could be comfortable. I'm giving you all the vital organs. You can see the hands, you can see the neck. These are generally considered pretty comfortable spots. And then are we looking for changes from baseline behavior? Particularly in your teams with people you know well and you know this is normal. You know, is there a change in something that I'm used to seeing, or we're seeing something that I'm not used to seeing? And anybody who tells you, well, I can use this nonverbal thing and tell you that's a lie, I don't know. That's a pretty bold assertion. I'm going to challenge you to say, it's going to make me curious. If I see somebody kind of move to this nonverbal where they're going to protect their neck, it's going to make me curious. What was just done, said, or thought that maybe made them feel a little bit uncomfortable here? And let's go back and probe this a little bit and be curious about it and see if we can line up some more of what's being said with some of the nonverbals that we see. And one last tip on the nonverbals: please do not ever let anybody know that you are reading their body language. I have a colleague who will tell you, oh, you just uncrossed your legs. I can tell you're comfortable with this. It's so invasive when somebody says, I'm reading your mind based on your body language. Like, it's a really offensive thing. You're like, get out of my brain. You're not allowed to be here. But practically, if you tell me that you're reading my body language, I'm going to start doing weird things that you've never seen before. And you can't Google fast enough. What does this nonverbal mean? What is he doing over here? And what does this mean? So now you've lost whatever advantage you thought you had because you told them, hey, this is what I'm up to.
Thank you for encouraging our listeners to check this out on YouTube so they could see all of those nonverbal signals you were giving us. Thank you for joining us. Where can our audience find out more about the work that you do, Scott?
Yeah, negotiationscollective.com is our homepage. We offer negotiation and conflict resolution training courses. I love giving keynotes to a variety of audiences and conferences and people around the world. And I'm a real person. I'm on LinkedIn. I still manage my own LinkedIn. If anybody wants to connect, tell them you heard me here, and I'll send you a note back.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you, Scott.